Let's head into the last empty places with author Peter Stark and broadcaster Jimmy Mack. A podcast about the adventure of getting lost to find yourself. Join Peter and Jimmy as they head into places where sometimes the only lights are the stars, and the only guide, your wits.
The form matches the content today. Peter Stark and I here on the Last Empty Places. This is crazy, Peter, because both of you and I are on a schedule. You have got an appointment with some friends since you are off in the Puget Sound, and I have to be at an awards banquet ceremony for the American Truck Historical Society. Any noise you might hear in the background, dude, is literally a hoppin' and happening, family-friendly and fun truck show that I am attending here in Springfield, Missouri. And just to kind of remind people, what you're doing is a summer sort of tradition for you guys. You're going to the Puget Sound, right? Tell us a little bit about that real quick, and then we'll jump in to today's Last Empty Places.
Well, my wife, Amy Ragsdale's family, the Ragsdale family, has cabin, which is understating it, a crazy cabin complex on an island in Puget Sound that sits on the beach, and it goes up into the rainforest, and it looks like this huge tree house with balconies and crow's nests. And her dad spent 50 years building it by hand. He passed away some years ago, but we still come out here every summer. And a lot of what we do is try to patch it back up. And another thing that we do is we also happen to grow oysters and mussels on the beach right in front of our house. And so I have some friends coming over in a little while, and I've got to go harvest the mussels while the tide is low. So we're talking about deadline here. I'm talking about a big cosmic natural deadline having to do with the moon's orbit around the Earth, which brings the tide up and brings it down. And if I don't hit this mark right, nobody's going to eat anything later.
Yeah, I'm on a couple of interesting timelines myself. I mean, the American Truck Historical Society is an organization dedicated to exactly what it sounds like. It is about the history of trucks. It's based out of Kansas City, Missouri. They are still in the process of growing and expanding. But these events, Peter, are crazy big. And what's interesting is when I wasn't kidding when I said family friendly. I mean, I have never seen more kids at a truck show where the kids actually are having a good time. Because one, the trucks are old and cool, military trucks, law enforcement vehicles, fire trucks, all that kind of stuff from ancient times when automobiles were called petromobiles and the like. And every year on the Friday before the end of the conference convention show, they have a big award ceremony to award people. The other really cool thing is they have members here who are from Mexico. 50 Mexican trucks have come up here, and they actually brought a giant griller and barbecue truck. So they have been, for anybody that's volunteering and for all their people, they've been making barbecue. There is a barbecue shack on site that's here where they're making barbecue. I actually had mac and cheese with pulled pork and jalapenos and bacon with a giant helping of potato salad on top. And I became convinced that if I'd added one more thing, it would have created a singularity of America so strong it would have pulled me into the spirit of 1776. Peter can tell you, behind me is a red, white, and blue booth area where I'm kind of encapsulated into. I drove here from the city of New Orleans, and I really was on a time limit because if I didn't get here in time, I wasn't going to get a lot of content. And I actually came up from New Orleans through into Missouri. But the thing is, you have to go through Mississippi. If you don't, you add about 3 hours to your trip. But if you go through Mississippi, it takes you, wait for it, the only way through is through back roads. It's a quicker trip by taking back roads than it is if you take the interstate system. The problem is that anybody who's driven a back road at night knows, this is the absolute truth, there is an entire week in the United States dedicated to rural automotive safety because per capita more people die on the roads in rural areas, not interstate areas, rural areas per capita than any place else because of animals, because of children wandering out of the woods, because of unfamiliar terrain. It's not that country people can't drive. It's that the people who don't live in the country, who come out there for vacation and come out there for recreation, don't know the terrain as well as they should. And I thought we would spend some time talking about what happens when you're either on a deadline and have to get from point A to point B in order to make that money, or you're going on a vacation where people are waiting for you in the Puget Sound or waiting for you on the beaches, and you get lost on the way. What happens when not only is there the tension and the anxiety of being lost, but what happens when it's also got a clock attached to it, that at some point you're going to run out of time to do the thing that you're supposed to do? And I know there's all kinds of historical examples of that. I mean, I keep thinking about at what point with Coronado was it's like, we need to get to this place. There's a place we need to get to. And so we just can't linger or wander or find a sub-adventure. And I've just kind of wondered if you actually ever got lost when heading out to a place where you had to be. Does that resonate with you at all?
Yeah, it does. Well, I mean, I can tell you this is, as we know, it's June and family vacations are starting, and school's out, vacations are starting, and I think almost every family has had that experience of you're on vacation or going to visit someone, and um, you're on a timeline, and people are expecting you, and something unexpected happens, like the road goes a different direction from what you were expecting, and it suddenly amps up the tension so fast. At least in our family, that's when we've had some of our most tense moments. It's like getting on the road in time, getting lost on the road, not getting in place in time. And the it's like the consequences aren't life threatening in the sense you're going to die, but they're emotional consequences when you have when you're close to people and you promise them you'll be there, or you're contributing to a dinner or whatever it is, and there's a certain emotional weight there that can really affect you and affect those immediately around you, like in the seat next to you, as often is the case while you're driving or somebody else is driving. There's a story that falls into this category, and I've been meaning to tell it, but it's a getting lost story, and it's on vacation. It has fairly dire consequences. Fortunately, everybody was all right. But so I'll give a kind of shortened version of that story, and I'll raise the question about at the end, that did we have to end up in that situation? So this is when I was in my early 20s. I was in college or just out of college, and I'd gone to Dartmouth College in New Hampshire. And I had a girlfriend my freshman year, Lilly, and she, even though we broke up, we stayed close friends. And her family was closely tied to Nantucket, the island of Nantucket. And they were city people, but they had her grandparents had a summer place there. And so she was very much in that Nantucket whaling culture, seagoing culture. It's very genuine, this very seafaring aspect of
it. Was the Silicon Valley of the 19th century. People don't realize that. It was, man. There's a book written that basically, I'm sorry, go ahead. But yes.
I mean, like, we can start. Yeah. I mean, their book, yeah, I mean, you got your Moby Dicks, there are a lot of things happening in that area in the early 1900s, or early 1800s. So yeah, I mean, loaded with history, loaded with whaling history. And so, Lilly, my friend, was always wanting to introduce me to the island and her culture there. And so at one point she invited me to go on the sailing trip. And it was a friend of hers who was some years old, maybe he was in his 30s, a really good sailor, who had been kind of commissioned to take someone else's sailboat from up in north of Cape Cod. I don't know, Marblehead or someplace up there. I think that's north of Cape Cod, and across the they call it Buzzards Bay, the big bay inside Cape Cod, and then through a canal that you can cross Cape Cod near its base, and then you come out the other side, and then there's Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket. I mean, not right there, but they're out in the ocean on the other side of Cape Cod. And so this was a big at sea adventure for me. I was an inland lake guy, and the sailboat was a beautiful, I don't know, 35-foot wooden sailboat. Probably slept 5, 6 people, And so we set out, and there were, I don't know, I think four of us maybe. And we set out, and in the afternoon, from setting out into the Atlantic, Buzzards Bay, and it's really windy, and beautiful, but really windy, and we're just getting slammed around and going up and down, and people are getting seasick, and that was the only time I've ever come close to being seasick, and then we finally, hours later, get to the canal, calm water, go through the canal. Now it's getting towards evening, and we come out the other side of the canal out into the Atlantic Ocean again, aiming for or steering for Nantucket Island. And right then at dusk, dense fog moves in, dense. And this is way pre GPS, no radar. I mean, there's nothing. You got like a chart, and what you have are buoys that make sounds, and so you hear these ringing buoys in the fog, and it's it's just, you cannot see a thing, and then it gets dark and you can see even less. But it was, for a while it was light, and so the guy who is the skipper, was saying, okay, this is our last known position. We can hear the ringing of this buoy, so we must be here. And the currents are running this fast that way, and so we should sail like 5 hours this way, and we'll be going so and so knots, and then we should, attack to the starboard, and we should go another 6 miles that way, and we should be at the harbor entrance in the fog.
My expression just communicate. I have no idea. I'm lost.
Yeah.
Just hearing it.
So it's like, but you're listening to these buoys and you're calculating how fast you're sailing, and thinking it's going to get you there. I think sea captains in the age of whaling had much more grasp of how to do this. But I mean, this guy, he was a good sailor. But this is a special circumstance. So we're trying to hit Nantucket Island, and we're in the fog, and I think we have a good wind, and we're sailing along, and we go for so many hours, and then it gets dark, and then we make our turn, our tack, and they see, I think even before we make this turn, they see a light, and the Nantucket people on the boat say, "Oh, there's the harbor entrance light." Okay, we know where we are now. And at this point, the fog is lifted. Now their stars are out, but it's dark. And so there's this light kind of out in the blackness far away. And so they say, "Oh, there's the harbor light." Okay, so now we steer for that. And so that's when, we make our turn, and we just start sailing. It's a long way away. And we're sailing along, good wind. And I'm pretty sure I'm up on the deck. Somebody has to be on watch. And we're just, beautiful night, stars and sailing, and there's still aiming towards this light. And all of a sudden, kabam! And the boat just slams to a stop. And we realize we've hit the island on a beach in the surf, just slammed into the island. And the whole boat's like smashing around and shaking. It's like a scene out of, like a Moby Dick scene. It is so crazy. And we're literally in the surf, beached in this big sailboat in the middle of the night. And it's like, where's the harbor light? Well, it was some little random light way inland. It was not the harbor light. It might have been a house light way inland. So that's when the action really began. The question is, did we have to be in a hurry to get to the island through the fog, or could we have hung out?
Yeah, I mean that really lands. Peter, I just want to tell you really quickly. A young lady actually walked over to the desk here, thinking that I'm like some display thing. I'm actually talking to my friend Peter Stark on a podcast that I'm making right now. So it's good to see you.
Say hello.
And Peter says hello back to you as well. Thank you, Squish Squad. Thinking about that though, it's exactly it. Is that why did you rush it? Why did you rush? What was the rush? And did it involve her at all? Was she part of the problem that caused the rush?
Well, I was just like a kind of a passenger who knew enough about sailing to help out, but this was all beyond me. Like what was going on here? Having grown up on an inland lake, we didn't have that far to go to get to land. It wasn't very far. You're not going, miles across open ocean. And so, what could we have done? Could we have sort of idled out in the open ocean until the fog lifted and we knew where we were going? Did we really have to kind of book it towards the island? And also when you see the light, I mean, if you're lost and you see a light, you think, well, yeah, that light's the thing that's saving me. I think that's kind of the instantaneous response, is that you suddenly you see a bit of civilization, familiarity, landmark, and you just become convinced it's the one that you need, when in fact it could be a random.
There is an Irish tradition of the will-o'-the-wisp. The will-o'-the-wisp is one of the most deadly things in people lost in the bog, lost in the fog, and then they would get these flashes of light and think, "Oh, I'm saved," and then head towards certain doom. And and then under the water, what's the great way that fish? What is the great evil fish that lurks under the water? And it's the anglerfish. With the glowing thing in front of his face.
Right? Oh,
yeah,
exactly.
with the lamp that leads other fish and other sea creatures towards that light, thinking they're moving towards surface, moving towards less warmer waters, and all they end up is in the maw of something. And the thing is too is I wanted to make the joke. I said, so when you get lost on the water, are you literally 8 swim strokes away from completely losing your bearings? The 8 steps.
I'd say even less than that.
Yeah, I mean, because the drift, because at least when you're lost in the wilderness, if you're lost on firma that is terra, I'm sorry, I couldn't resist that.
Yeah.
If you're lost on terra firma, if you stay in place, you stay in place. Unless you drop anchor. If you get lost at sea, and even if you drop anchor, depending upon the length of the rope that you use and the drop of the anchor and the depth of the sea, you can wander very much away from the place that you were originally in, especially if it's fog. Now, look, people don't understand this. You know this. There are certain kinds of fog where the fog is down, but if you look up, you can see stars. People need to understand that too. But if you can't see the stars and you try to stay still, you ain't staying still.
No, there's no way.
There is. I mean, basically, we've been talking about, what is it, the ETOC, the idea, but it's like, we don't have a complex system of reading the temperature of water, and if you lose sight of the horizon, what do you do when lost at sea?
Yeah, and the sea is it's obviously a fluid medium. So as you say, it's constantly changing. Unlike a forest which changes over decades or centuries or geologic time, this is changing by the second and millisecond. I mean, it's just literally fluid. And so I think that's such a as we're going here, it's such a cool metaphor for this whole subject that we're exploring, our theme about getting lost and why it's important and how to find yourself. But that's a special case, to be lost at sea.
And then having to make a decision about if you need to be back. I mean, I know we kind of got a little far afield, but it's kind of amazing because you bring up the idea of the sea as an ever-changing entity. I don't know if you know this, but everybody knows the famous, Jaws turned 50 years old last year. Everybody knows the famous story of how the shark was broken, and and the bad relationship between Robert Shaw and Richard Dreyfuss, and the contentiousness and all the kind of strain. One of the biggest problems that actually put them behind, you'll love this, is that this is before CGI, and there were no matte paintings. So they had to shoot on the boat. Well, they couldn't get consistent shots because the background kept changing.
Yeah.
The cloud formations were changing so rapidly that sometimes they said to do another shoot. It's like they have no continuity. So you were always having to use the shots that were in the closest proximity to each other to get any sort of cloud continuity. And if you think people don't notice that kind of stuff, even in 1970s, it would have been glaring because it's jarring when something behind somebody changes. When you do a cut back to somebody and the next shot that you used has no cloud bank behind you, or suddenly does have a cloud bank behind you. That's how unpredictable the sea is. That's how difficult it is, and that's why they often tell people either go out on the sea with absolute purpose or go out with no purpose whatsoever, if that makes any sense. Well, the idea either go out there with a freight liner, some sort of shipping and freight where you're in a monstrously big vessel that can cut through waters and cut through winds and get where it's got to go and get there, or go out there on a sailboat and just let it take you away someplace like Christopher Cross. If you have a deadline of any sort going out into the ocean, you better make sure you have backup engines and hired cadres to like basically get you where you're going to go. I mean, it's just, I mean,
Okay, so let's wrap this back to the your family vacation in June, and you're setting out in your motor car and
your
and
Petro Mobile.
your Petro Mobile. I want one of those. Can you buy us one of those over there at the?
Oh, I got to tell you, the kind of checks the people here would part with these things for, it's not in my tax bracket.
I'm sure it's not. I'm sure nor mine.
So family stuff. Sorry, I got you off track again.
But
Family stuff.
But I'm just thinking the equivalent of that when you're on a family vacation, and in some ways a family vacation is frequently a combination of both wandering purposelessly and heading for a direct destination. So in a way, you can have both. Like you're heading for a family reunion, but it might be 2 weeks and 8 states away, and you're exploring as you get there, in route. And I think that works really well until you do get your sights set on like, oh, we're going to spend the night in this certain town, in the foothills of such and such, or on this certain lake, and we're going to, you'd make that decision the day before or early in the morning at breakfast, and then halfway through the day things don't go as planned, and you've got this vision of where you're going to be. I'm talking about myself, where I'm going to be that night, and I think it's really cool. We're going to get there, and I like the destination, and then suddenly you start getting diverted, and the vision starts slipping away, and you start like going faster, and everything gets a little more frantic to try to get to that vision, and then things can really screw up at that point.
Oh yeah. Well, there's a big theory about why the black dog appears to truckers who are pushing it too hard. It's the way light gets refracted. And so the way they see in a rear, there are actually scientific theories about like strange sightings on the highway happen when people haven't gotten enough sleep, happen when people are stressing themselves out. There are like supposedly chemical reasons for this. I brought all this up as a topic today because I literally had this moment of terrible panic. Yeah, I knew that this event was in Springfield. And I didn't think much about it. I just plugged in Springfield into my GPS, and off I went to Springfield, Missouri. About 3 hours in, I'm headed up. It's, by the way, my favorite drive in Louisiana, my favorite drive is when you're going towards Baton Rouge on the I-10 West, rather than continuing to go to Baton Rouge, you take the Hammond exit, and that puts you on 55. Okay, and that takes you to a different view of the lake, that takes you past some really famous restaurants, and takes you into Tangipahoa Parish, which is as romantic as you think it is.
Okay.
But about 3 hours outside of New Orleans, the thought hit me. I'm like, wait a minute. Was that Springfield, Missouri, or Springfield, Illinois?
I'm from Wisconsin. I'd put in Springfield. There's no way I'd be going to Missouri.
And so I went back and checked. I had to pull over at a racetrack, and I mean the amount of panic that was setting in because the drive to Springfield, Missouri from New Orleans and the drive to Springfield, Illinois are a little different.
When you're on a deadline too, I mean that's the other thing.
Yeah, I went to the map. I went to their website, and because it is the American Trucking Historical Society. What I love about this is that they not only had like where it was, but they had a link that says "click here for directions," and it was an automatic GPS reroute. It was my route. When I did the replacement route, it was my route. I'm like, oh, thank God. But Peter, for about 15 minutes, deep in Tangipahoa Parish, right next to the lake, and with swamp on my right, I'm like going, I think I might have made a terrible mistake. And that thought that just hit me, it sunk in. We don't have a lot of time today. I just wanted us to drop in to the people who do listen to us. We wanted to make sure we got in there and got you guys some content, something fun to think about, talk about, maybe chew on. I'll be posting some stuff, of course, the next couple of weeks as the Last Empty Places continues. Peter's got some muscles to get to. I've got a banquet to get to. I love you. There's nothing you can do about it. It's great to see you, my friend.
Great to see you.
And now here's Clare Marie with some fun information.
The Last Empty Places is a Planet Claire production and lives at peterstarkauthor.com. Listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all your favorite platforms. Write to us on the contact page at peterstarkauthor.com. And in the meantime, head on out and find an adventure.